seized just like the German had before him. Another minute, and he just added to the rapidly growing pile of corpses. We warned the others as best we could. Only a few of them seemed to get the message, each getting out from their chairs in an attempt at fleeing. Alas, no sooner had they decided to run before they dropped dead on the floor. Oh God, we're gonna die, aren't we? Lewis said. I guess only the winner survives, I typed back. 3 days passed. During that time, we made numerous attempts at contacting the outside world. Phone calls, emails, messages, they were all blocked. Lewis and I were the only players left, keeping each other awake as we searched in despair for a way out. I already ran out of supplies, so if sleep deprivation didn't get me, dehydration would. Then I noticed that Lewis hadn't spoken in a few minutes. Lewis, no, wake the fuck up. I called out to no avail. He had already died. As he left the game, I was declared the winner. 29 people had died, and I was gifted an unfathomable amount of cash. Since then, I've been searching for Lewis's family. Even if they weren't close, I want them to know that he was a good person up until the end. I'm so sorry. I wish it had been me. I've always had a morbid sense of curiosity, and while that's not a fact I'm particularly proud of, I've always just jotted it down to teenage curiosity. To be honest, it probably started back in middle school when people thought it was fun to send around horrible videos of executions and bizarre porn fetishes to each other on the MSN messaging site. Just mentioning it makes me feel old. These days, there's an overabundance of these sites. Places to watch people die, blurry videos of car crashes, beheadings, and animal abuse. Of course, it's not something I actively seek out, but when I stumble across it, I feel compelled to just watch, to prove to myself that nothing can affect me. Though, for the truly gruesome stuff, one needs to visit the so-called dark web. As a guy who has fallen far behind in the advancement of technology, it absolutely baffled my mind that only a tiny fragment of the internet is available through a Google search. The rest, which makes up approximately 99.9%, is hidden and requires a special browser for access. With the help of a handy-dandy YouTube tutorial, I quickly downloaded the Tor browser and went on my way to search for the hidden aspects of the internet, as one naturally does. It couldn't have taken more than half an hour clicking on shared onion links before I stumbled across something that quenched my thirst for the obscene forever. The website itself was rather plain, just a black background with a video player in the center and a chat box beneath. Within a few seconds of entering the website, the video itself had loaded and automatically started playing. What was depicted before me was a scrawny-looking man in his early 20s, strapped to a chair and covered in wounds. In the upper left corner of the video, a timer ran, counting up each second. 24 minutes and 14 seconds. Please, stop, please. It was an accident, I swear, he yelled. A larger man entered the picture, a large needle in his hand connected to an empty syringe. Without speaking a word, he stuck the needle as far as it could go, into the victim's abdomen. He let out a loud scream as the man removed the needle and plunged it back in. After a few stabs, the man grabbed a hammer and hit the victim straight in his jaw, shattering his mandible, leaving him unable to form any coherent speech. He let out a gargled whimper before passing out. I tried to forward the video, sure it had to be fake. But that's when I realized that it wasn't pre-recorded footage, but a live stream. 26 minutes and 12 seconds were the words that lit up the screen. The chat beneath the video went wild, calling out the victim as a pathetic excuse of a human being, demanding the man to continue the torture. A few seconds passed, and the chat was replaced by a voting form containing only 2 options: life or death. The votes were quickly counting, the bar for death rising rapidly. As much as I could stomach, I wouldn't be part of an active murder, so I quickly voted for life. In the end, the results were displayed on the screen. Out of 200 people, the results were 95% for death, 4% for life, 1% did not vote. 10 people had tried to save the poor kid, but it wasn't enough. Without further warning, the man grabbed the hammer and started repeatedly hitting him, starting from the legs and working his way up until all that remained was a bloody pile of broken flesh. I sat speechless, staring helplessly at the screen as I noticed that my camera light had lit up. The video player vanished, and in its place, 10 smaller boxes popped up, all displaying people from various places around the world, all being unknowingly filmed by their own webcams. To my absolute horror, one of the boxes showed my bedroom and myself wearing a terrified expression. It quickly dawned on me that these were the people who voted to save the poor kid. Who will be next? A message said as a timer counted down towards 0. A few boxes turned black, to which the chat responded with laughter, a hopeless attempt at escape. 3, 2, 1. 9 of the 10 pictures disappeared from the screen, including my own, leaving the screen occupied by a middle-aged Asian man frozen in fear. We'll see you soon. Good luck. I let out a sigh of both relief and panic. I had escaped unharmed, but not everyone was that lucky. Of course, I called the police, but by the time they could even look into it, the link had long since expired. I don't know what else I could have done, but it taught me not to look too deep into the depths of the dark web. I'm lucky to still be alive, and it's safe to say that I've stuck to YouTube videos and Reddit ever since. When I say drugs are fantastic, I'm not talking about the designer substances you find in a dark alley. No, I mean the fantastic medications invented to cure anything from infections to psychological problems. The only problem is the excessive restriction on legal drugs. The amount of research, work, and potential that gets lost with each denial from the FDA. Just because something doesn't work exactly as intended, doesn't mean it's useless. I say this as a person who's always had trouble sleeping. Not in the sense that I can't fall asleep, but rather that I need a whole 11 hours just to feel barely rested. A fact that absolutely does not fly in my line of work. After trying conventional drugs that were aimed at people with narcolepsy, none proved to be an adequate solution. I had no choice but to turn to the illegal side of things. Think about all the drugs that never reach the shelves at your local pharmacy due to failing to get FDA approval. It's not like their recipes and research just get thrown out. No, there's a whole market for them buried in the depths of the dark web, available to anyone who knows where to look. Of course, it has its risks, and it isn't something I'd recommend for your average Joe. I, however, was desperate. Months passed, and I tried numerous different substances, some which helped a little, while others just made it worse. In the end, I landed on a product simply called Nox. Using a P.O. box, the medication arrived within a week. To my surprise, rather than finding a bottle filled with colorful pills, I had just received the one, wrapped in a high-quality, expensive-looking package. Based on the forum I found it on, no one had experienced any adverse effects, so I stupidly ingested it with little hesitation, impatiently awaiting its results. On any given day, I'd be tired around 11, but with the pill making its way through my digestive tract, I realized that midnight had come and gone, leaving me wide awake. Morning came, and yet I didn't need any sleep. It was great. I got all my work done at a record pace and still had plenty of leftover leisure time. It caused some jealousy at the office, but considering my competitive nature, it didn't bother me in the slightest. Days turned to weeks, then weeks turned to months, and I had successfully eluded the need to sleep. By all logical aspects of biology, my brain should have deteriorated, driving me to the brink of madness. But even a year after ingesting the pill, I remained sharp as ever. The only thing I noticed was my skin seeming thinner, paler, as if I had fallen slightly ill. I initially felt suspicious of the pill, but my tired-looking facade could just as easily be explained by the excessive amount of work. It wasn't as if I could stop taking the pills anyway, seeing as I'd only taken the one. That's when I noticed the first sore. It looked like an ulcer, a bed sore, but it was situated on my stomach just below the navel. It didn't hurt or anything, so I just put some cream on and waited, but it kept growing. During the next week, patches of skin started falling off, revealing the fat and muscle beneath. It didn't particularly hurt, but it was growing day by day and it horrified me. I quickly tried to find the site I'd purchased it from, but in the ocean of hidden onions that is the dark web, it had simply vanished, and the link had expired. As far as I could tell, no one, not even the FDA, had ever heard about a pill called Nox. Over the next few weeks, my physical state deteriorated, and the doctors were baffled. Yet I remained completely lucid. Even sedation for procedures had no effect on me. Eventually, after months of my skin melting off, my heart nearly stopped. Yet I couldn't fall unconscious. As I type this, my body is rotting away, and I'm gradually losing function of my arms and legs, and my vision is fading. The only thing remaining is my mind, as wide awake as ever. Once I'm done here, I'm putting a bullet in my brain, but I'm worried that even then I'll have some sliver of consciousness to keep me awake as they put me in the ground, where I'll lay in darkness forever. Ever since its invention, I've dreamed of getting my hands on some Vbucks liquid. Imagine a substance so dark it can obscure any three-dimensional shape and turn it into a mere shadow. I just never thought something so harmless and fun could cause my demise. While it's available for purchase under certain circumstances, it's not something just anyone can buy. Of course, if you know where to look on the dark web, you can get anything you want. To be fair, of all the horrible things found on the dark web, Vbucks liquid is among the less sinister options. After just a few clicks, I found a vial of paint available for a cheap price. Even if the paint turned out to be fake, it wouldn't be much of a loss. With little thought, I purchased one vial and eagerly awaited its arrival. The inconspicuous package arrived a couple days later. It was a cube-shaped vial full of the light-absorbing liquid. If not for the feel it had in my hand, I never could have guessed it was a solid object. I was ecstatic, but after a thorough inspection, I noticed a minuscule crack in the vial. A drop of liquid seeped out through the hole and fell gently onto the doormat below. What looked like a hole into an infinite void formed on the mat. I bent down to remove it with a dirty cloth. As I started rubbing the spilled paint, I could have sworn my fingers slipped deeper into the stain. I immediately retracted my hand, certain I must have been mistaken. After the initial shock wore off, I dipped the cloth back into the stain, and it just sank through. After several attempts at poking the stain, I lifted the doormat up to check if the hole continued into the floor. To my surprise, it was clean. At that point, I was more curious than afraid. Baffled by the impossible spot, I could do little more than stare in awe at the thing. Then I came to the horrifying realization that the hole was growing. I grabbed a few plastic bags and chucked the doormat into one, making sure to double wrap and seal. I thought the situation was under control, that I'd contained the ever-growing void. Alas, one of the Vbucks drops had hit my hand. Without hesitation, I rushed to scrub my hands, praying that it wasn't too late. Unfortunately, no matter what kind of soap I applied, the stain wouldn't budge. By the time I'd given up, it had already grown to the size of a marble. In absolute panic, I rushed to the doctor. Despite his initial doubt at my situation, he quickly came around once he saw the bizarre spot on my hand. He prodded me with needles and various probes, futilely attempting to get samples for the lab. All the while, it kept growing. Before long, it had consumed my entire right hand. Though it was still visible as a silhouette, I had long since lost any use of it, leaving it as little more than a limp appendage. Days went by, and the darkness grew up my arm. In a last-ditch attempt at saving my life, the doctors all agreed that amputation would be the only feasible solution. It was a devastating loss, but worth it to save my life. I signed all the necessary papers using my one remaining hand, and they rushed me into an operating room. While the surgery only lasted a few hours, rehabilitation would take weeks, if not months. The doctors entered my room as I awoke from the anesthesia. Though the surgery had been a clear success, they didn't seem happy. "What's wrong?" I asked with a groggy voice. "I'm sorry," was all he could say. The drugs had already started to wear off, and I could feel pins and needles all over my body. I lifted up my shirt and screamed at the horrific sight. My entire torso was covered in hundreds and hundreds of tiny holes. It looked as if chunks of flesh had been removed, replaced only by that god-forsaken Vbucks paint. "We think the substance has spread through your bloodstream. There's nothing more we can do," the doctor said. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've lost my legs, my arms, and most of my internal organs. I haven't felt my heartbeat since yesterday, and I can hardly breathe. What terrifies me even more than the liquid replacing my entire body is the fact that I haven't died yet. Whatever the case, I've been isolated. The doctors put me in a special chamber to prevent the further spread of the liquid. I guess it's for the best. I'll be completely replaced by Vbucks soon. I just hope it kills me first. When people want digital footprints to be scoured away clean and then replaced by other preferable images, that's when I get the call. I was once hired by an oil sheik to replace several faces on an embassy security feed to hide their involvement in the assassination of a journalist. Remember the 2 women who contaminated and killed the North Korean madman's half-brother in the airport? Those women were originally a pair of North Korean goons, but I removed them and set up that pair of lady stooges to take the fall. My ethics are porous, and my greed is insatiable. In October of last year, I was hired to deepfake some footage. A Black Ops team had infiltrated a top-secret lab in China and stolen some highly virulent bioweapon. The lab itself wasn't the problem. The team consisted of professional ghosts, entering and exiting like invisible ninjas, not a trace left behind in the lab's hardwired net. But then, the team leader did something so stupid, so outside his mission scope that I was brought in for damage control before any possible leaks caused a tsunami of geopolitical fallout. He met in Shanghai the following day at the Ritz-Carlton with somebody well known in the world of presidential politics. This figure, traveling under the name Randall Mariani, is a former NYC mayor who now pursues shadow diplomacy for the current administration. Anyway, this guy was caught on security cameras in the lobby exchanging envelopes with the leader of the infiltration team. I was hired that night by a shell company operating out of the Cayman Islands that goes by the name of DeluxeDeepFake.com. They wanted every piece of digital evidence tying these 2 people together to be deepfaked, replacing the former NYC mayor with the son of the president's political opponent in the upcoming election. It left a bad taste in my mouth, but the money being thrown at me was enough to buy mouthwash in industrial-sized drums. However, that money never came through, because the moment I finished my deepfake, my computer suddenly fried. From motherboard to monitor, dead. Then the power to my house was cut. Then the guys in black, those same invisible ninjas that hit the Chinese lab, came busting through my windows. I'm alive because I work in a basement with an escape hatch. I snuck away. Now I live day by day, constantly looking over my shoulder. Coronavirus is spreading throughout the world. Someday, I'll get back online and reverse my deep fake. The world needs to know.
I'm not going to lie and claim I'm a perfect person. Hell, I'm probably not even a decent one. I used to party all the time, got involved in casual drug use, and obscene amounts of alcohol. It's not something I'm particularly proud of. But with no family and few friends left to worry about me, I figured why not. I didn't have any plans past high school, so I might as well just enjoy the little time I'd been given on this planet. However, with the illegality surrounding drugs, it means there is some risk getting a hold of it. Usually one has to get involved with sketchy people in strange places. Most of the time, the product is good. After all, the dealers need to keep their customers alive. Still, just getting caught or buying fake stuff was a risk I didn't bother dealing with. Thus, I eventually turned to the dark web. Imagine that. A place online where you can buy the best quality drugs with just a couple of clicks, and they send it directly to your address in a discreet package. It tends to be pretty safe, and people even rate the various pills, full on with forums to describe each individual experience. As time progressed, a few of the .onion sites would begin to vanish off the face of the internet. Maybe the dealers quit, or maybe the FBI shut them down. No one really knows. So without a steady supplier, I had to venture deeper into the dark web in search of a new place to hand me my weekly fix. I looked around on a few forums, but most of the posts were old, and a surprisingly large amount of the sites had been taken down. Of those that still remained up, most sold dubious, weak drugs. Eventually, my search landed me with a new recommendation. It was a place I'd never even heard about, but their product was fairly cheap. As if that wasn't good enough on its own, their site seemed exceptionally professional. It might sound stupid, but if a site presents itself with a good-looking design, there's a bigger likelihood that people blindly trust them. I never claimed to be smart. Yes, I was one of those gullible people, and it damn near cost me my life. The website I found didn't even have a name. It just displayed a logo that consisted of a pill in the center of a bullseye. It only contained a single product, but it alone had hundreds of top-rated reviews, all praising it in various different languages. It didn't seem staged, and I truly believed they had been written by different people. With that, I decided to order a weekend package, which held 3 pills. It was the cheapest option based on the amount of pills, and I figured it would be worth a shot. As promised, the product arrived the next Friday, with an ample amount of time before the evening would even begin. I got ready for a night out on the town, and swallowed the first pill with half an hour to spare. Of course, I made sure the dosage was fit for my body weight and previous experiences, knowing the real risk of overdoses if I wasn't careful. Then, I left my house, ready to waste another night of my life, and darkness. With that, my memories were shattered into a million incomprehensible fragments. Whether I went to a club or just passed out in the street, I didn't know. It was all beyond hazy, a mesh of colors and sounds that didn't convey any meaning. It has stolen even my most basic cognitive functions. The next thing I remember is waking up on hard, rough wooden floorboards. I was soaked in my own vomit, but the utter confusion of where I was overrode my pain. It was dark, which came as both a blessing and a cause for unrest. At least my eyes wouldn't suffer, but it added to the mystery of where I'd awoken. There wasn't much in the room, except for a cupboard, few moldy chairs, and a broken fireplace. The windows were partially boarded up and covered by dark curtains. On the floor lay 3 strangers I'd never seen before. 2 men, one significantly older than myself, and the other my own age, and a young woman looking slightly older than a teenager. I rolled over to push myself up, groaning as I realized just how much my body hurt. "Hey!" I tried to call out, but my voice was too hoarse to produce enough volume. Once I was finally able to push myself to my feet, I took a peek out the window. We were in a forest, and the little room we'd woken in looked like a hunting lodge. Whether I'd met these people during a party, or if I'd just stumbled into a drug den, I didn't know. Then the girl started groaning, finally regaining consciousness. She looked over at me in slight panic, clearly not recognizing who I was. Then she took a glance at her surroundings and shot to her feet in fear. "Where am I? Who are you?" I backed away from her a bit, giving her enough space to calm down. "Hey, calm down. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm Wilson. I just woke up here. I was wasted last night. Can't remember what happened." She thought about it for a moment, before realizing she couldn't recall anything from the previous night. I was just partying. I don't remember." "What's your name?" "Lisa." "All right, Lisa. Do you know where we are?" She shook her head. Her mind was as gone as my own. As we stood there trying to figure out what was going on, the oldest man started to wake up. He had salt and pepper hair, probably in his early 50s. I bent down to talk to him. But as he saw me standing above him, he grabbed my throat, rolled over, and started choking me. "What the fuck are you doing in my house?" he yelled as he crushed my throat. The girl tried to shove him off, but she was too small compared to the massive man. Luckily, her effort distracted him enough for me to push him to the side, just giving me enough time to catch some air. "Stop," I coughed out. "I'm not trying to hurt you." The man quickly inspected his surroundings, immediately realizing his mistake. "Where am I?" he asked. "We don't know," I said, still out of breath. "Why did you attack me like that?" "I thought I was at home. I didn't even leave the house yesterday. What the fuck is going on?" He took a moment to gather his thoughts, rubbing the heavy sleep out of his eyes. He was a well-built guy for his age, clearly with some experience in fighting. Lisa went closer, ready to introduce herself. "I'm Lisa," she said as she reached out her hand. Adam Morrison. Do you guys remember anything?" We both shook our heads. The 4th guy was still unconscious, lying face down on the ground. Adam went over to shake him awake, hoping he had some clues as to what had happened the night before. "Hey man, wake up," he said as he shook him another time. He still didn't react. Oh boy, that's not good. He then proceeded to turn him over. Lisa and I immediately jumped back in shock as we noticed several bullet holes to his torso. He was dead, and probably had been for quite some time. In addition, there was a note stuck to his corpse. Lisa and I were speechless, but Adam didn't seem all that horrified. He just took the note off the guy and started reading it aloud. "Thank you for your purchase. Let the games begin." On the paper, I noticed an all too familiar logo. It was the bullseye with a pill in the middle, from the same dark web site I'd purchased drugs from. "What, you know this logo?" he asked me. "Yeah, I bought some pills from there a few days ago." "I did the same," Lisa said. The man sighed. "Guess we're all in the same boat then. Whoever these guys are, they're not just drug dealers." "What do they mean by games, though?" Lisa asked. "I'm not sure yet, but..." He was interrupted by someone knocking on the door. We all jumped back from the sudden noise, but none of us dared open up. 3 knocks were all we got before a paper slid in under the door. Adam rushed to pull open the door, but there was no one on the other side. All that lay before us was a dense forest through which someone could easily vanish within a second. We'd basically have to crawl to get through it. He picked the note off the ground and started reading. Dear users, thank you for participating in the yearly hunt. You have 24 hours to escape the forest, or you will be eliminated from the game. Hunters have been dispatched to track you down. Good luck. He handed the letter to me and I read it over again. Just like the previous note, it held the same logo. What the fuck are we going to do? Lisa asked on the brink of tears. Adam went from window to window, making sure the rotten blinds and boards were properly covering them up. We're going to get the fuck out of here. But first, you need to get out of the neon yellow top of yours, he said as he pointed to Lisa. What? We need to stay hidden. These bright clothes won't help. He went to the nearby closet and started rummaging through it. Within seconds, he found some old jackets and shoes that were wet and partially broken down over time. Put these on. My clothes were already fairly dark, as were Adam's. He seemed experienced, which gave me a minor glimmer of hope. Are you sure about this? Beats staying here and getting slaughtered. We didn't need any further convincing. Adam seemed to be the only one with even the faintest idea on what to do. Because of that, we diligently followed him outside, keeping our heads low as we got ready to crawl through the dense forest. It was about midday, and still we couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Even after a few hours passed, we still didn't see any of the aforementioned hunters. Still, Adam kept telling us to keep quiet, and to only step where he did. Lisa struggled to keep up, as she had replaced her high heels with shoes that were 2 sizes too big for her feet. Suddenly, Adam stopped dead in his tracks, causing us both to bump into him. He'd noticed something on the ground, a tripwire. It was connected to spikes that would have emerged from the ground it triggered, killing whoever unfortunate enough to walk into the trap. How the hell did you see that? Don't worry about that. Let's just say I have experience with it. The day went on, and my legs were getting to the point of total collapse. Adam kept looking up at the sky, but the clouds had since fallen away behind a thick layer of dense clouds. Where are we heading? South, I think. I'm not sure. I was exhausted, out of shape, and hungry. Lisa didn't fare much better. She sat down to take a break, which seemed to annoy Adam. No sooner had she stopped moving before we heard a brief whizzing sound, as if a bee had flown by at incredible speed. What was... I tried to ask. Get down! Adam screamed. Another whiz was heard, followed by a hole produced in the tree behind us. Splinters exploded from the hole through the air. Shit, 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 I screamed as I realized someone was shooting at us. Lisa got up to run in panic. Adam called for her to get down, but it was too late. Several more bullet holes were created in the scenery around her as she ran, none even close to hitting her. It was almost as if they weren't aiming at her. Instead, they just let her keep running. She didn't get far before running into a trap hole in the ground. There she fell about 4 feet onto several spikes sticking up from the ground. I didn't dare look down in the hole, but I heard her hopeless screams. We couldn't help her. Still, I instinctively wanted to get up and check on her, but Adam held me down. You want to die? He asked. Just stay close to me. We need to keep moving. We basically crawled away from the gunshots. But just like with Lisa, none of the bullets even came close to hitting us. It felt more as if they were hurting us in a certain direction, but I wasn't going to stick around and find out if that was truly the case. What about Lisa? I asked. She's dead. Keep moving. We spent minutes crawling before reaching a hill. Once we'd gotten halfway down, the shooting stopped. Adam pulled me to my feet and we kept running downwards. At the end of the slope, we finally found a clearing leading out of the forest. We got out! I almost screamed in victory. But then I noticed something in the tall grass. About a dozen darkly dressed men stood up, each wielding a rifle. They laughed at us as we retreated back into the forest. They didn't even raise their weapons. They just laughed and waved as we kept fleeing. One of them even gestured for us to keep running and held up 5 fingers to signify how much time we had left. We escaped from the open fields back into a forest constantly growing in density. There were no bullets flying by, but we both knew they'd follow us where we went. We needed to get out of the forest, but neither of us knew the way. Then we saw it, a mountain in the distance, only an hour's walk away. But the closer we got to the mountain, the darker it got. The clouds above were thickening, and the dense treetops blocked out every bit of light we could receive. Before long, it would start to rain, a prophecy foretold by the howling wind that accompanied us on our journey. In the dark, I kept stumbling over roots sticking up from the ground. I told Adam to wait, but he couldn't hear me over the howling wind. As I got back to my feet for the 3rd time, he was just gone. I kept wandering on alone, calling out for him. Then, I almost fell into a deep pit dug into the ground. Inside lay several dozen corpses in various stages of decay. Then it hit me that the hunters wanted us to go here. They needed us to see this pit, so we could know what awaited us when we inevitably lost the game. "Adam!" I called out. But through the developing storm, he couldn't hear me. I just kept walking, watching as darkness overwhelmed my surroundings. I started to hear twigs breaking around me, something stalking me almost in absolute silence. Then something caught around my leg, and I came crashing down to the ground. It was a tripwire, but no trap had been activated. I let out a mild sigh of relief when I heard someone call out for me. I looked to the side to find Adam nailed to a tree by the trap that had been activated. He'd tripped it before me, causing him to get impaled by metal spikes. He couldn't move. He was too wounded. "I found the exit, but I got careless," he groaned. "Oh, God," I said as I tried to pull the spikes out from his abdomen. It was a futile task. He was pretty much nailed to the tree. There was a cave in the wall behind me. Adam pointed to it with a trembling finger. "Just go," he let out in merely a whisper. With that, he let out his last breath and drifted off to eternal slumber. Without hesitating, I started running into the cave. Once inside, I had to rely on my other senses to get through. It was pitch black, but the draft produced meant that there had to be an opening on the other side. I felt my way along the walls as I heard footsteps behind me. I just kept going as fast as I could until I finally saw the light on the other end of the tunnel. Then I ran again, my lungs burning and my legs wobbling. I couldn't see any rain on the other side, but the storm might just be trapped on the other side of the mountain. There were footsteps following behind me, followed by chuckles that echoed through the cave. I had to keep going. I couldn't give up. Then I finally entered open space again, just in time for my legs to give in. I was out from the mountain, and in front of me laying nothing but empty, open fields. I tried to crawl, but I was too weak. I just turned around and saw 5 men in dark clothing come outside, each of them with a rifle. One of the men raised his weapon, ready to fire upon me. But one of the others stopped him. "Stop," he said. He found the way out of the forest. The hunt has ended. They chuckled again before returning into the cave. For them, it had just been a game. A hunt that they'd already gone through 100 times before. I was just a random victim that happened to purchase a drug off their website. It took me another 3 days to traverse the massive landscape and find the nearest town. But the hunters had at least let me live. Once home, I called the police, told them everything that I knew. Of course, the website had been removed by then, and I couldn't for the life of me find the forest they'd previously chased me through. Officially, no one has gone missing, because the people chosen for the hunt were people who wouldn't be missed, including me.
My dad was the greatest man I ever knew. He never shied away from helping others and always offered an ear when people needed to talk. When he was taken away from us at the young age of 41, it destroyed my family. Last week, I spoke to him again. and now I wish I hadn't. I'll be the first to admit, the deep web always scared me. I expected some illegal set of websites for drugs, weapons, and human trafficking. In reality, it's little more than a bunch of obscure forums sprinkled with the occasional leaked email password. Every now and then, you might be lucky enough to find a gold nugget in the stream of useless shit. If you're anything like me, you might even enjoy the futile search. The one time I actually stumbled across something worthwhile, it scarred me for life. It was a page called Mortex, a forum with thousands of active users, all seeming to search for specific people. Looking for Jack Glover, 1956 to 2003, passed from pancreatic cancer, the top thread said. It was an odd task, searching for someone that had died so long ago. I presumed they were distant relatives looking for a gravestone. But once I browsed through the comments, it piqued my curiosity. It was odd searching for someone that had died so long ago. I figured they were trying to find a lost family member's grave or something. Another thread read, "Oh my god, Hannah, I can't believe you found me." At that moment, I figured it was some sort of roleplay forum. Each thread followed the same formula, someone seeking to speak with lost loved ones. Despite my instincts saying it was all make-believe, I decided to post my own search. Looking for Clark Henderson, 1969 to 2010, passed from cardiac arrest. That was the name of my dad. He was the one person I'd give anything to see again after he unexpectedly died from a heart attack. To my surprise, I only had to wait a couple of minutes before someone left a comment. "Henry?" it said, along with a voice chat invitation. My hands shook so much that I could barely navigate the menu. Before long, I was connected, and an all too familiar voice called my name. "Henry? It's really you, isn't it?" It was bullshit. It had to be. Yet the voice I heard clearly belonged to my dead father. "Dad, how is this?" I stopped dead. "I love you so much, and I'm sorry. I should have gotten my heart checked, but I just didn't know. I felt fine up till the moment I died. It's not your fault, but how do I know this is real? How do I know it's really you? When you were 3, you attempted to make dinner. You didn't know about the concept of pots and pans, so you just threw the vegetables directly on the stove." He chuckled, cutting the story short. "Right, just as I'd forgotten about that," I said. "You almost burned the house down," he continued. "I've tried to tell people this story before, but you made me swear an oath of secrecy." I felt myself tearing up just by the sound of his voice. Unfortunately, curiosity overwhelmed my sense of nostalgia. "I have so many questions, I don't even know where to begin," I said as 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. Then it hit me. The situation didn't just entail my personal quarrels with life. No, it was so much bigger. I could ask any question about what came after death. After much contemplation, I finally landed on a simple, yet horrifying question. "Dad, where are you?" I asked. "Henry, please, don't." He trailed off. "Don't what?" I replied. "They don't like it when you ask. I can't, they'll..." He froze. I should have stopped then and there, but I couldn't. "I just need to know what comes after, please," I said. My dad paused. "Henry, I'm sorry." "Sorry about what?" I asked. "Heaven, hell, it's not real. This place, whatever it is, it's not what I thought. We're just spare parts waiting to be." Our voice channel cut out, and my dad's voice vanished. I tried to call him back. I tried to message. I even attempted to make a new thread, but he was just gone. Before I spoke to him, I was never afraid of death. Now that I've heard the fear in the voice of my dead father, I'm terrified. Have you ever made a friend online? One you've never met in real life, but whom you cherish nonetheless? For me, that friend was Adam, a random guy I met on a forum on the deep web. Nothing sinister, just a place not categorized by the Google search engine, mostly used to discuss weird conspiracies and places to download movies in a less than legal manner. Adam was a funny person, and a genius when it came to pop culture, music, and movies. He'd seen or heard it all, which made it extremely easy to find new things to watch because he always had something to recommend. A few years passed, and we spoke almost every day, always using the same messaging service on our favorite dark web forum. I suggested more common sites to him, but he was adamant at keeping our friendship purely within the boundaries of that page, be it for privacy reasons or whatnot. Other than that, I never noticed anything off about him. We never really delved into more personal areas, but that's not exactly abnormal. We never really put real life into the mix. In a way, I suppose he was my escape from the stress of real life. That was how it went on until last year, when Adam asked me a very peculiar question that deviated from our usual topics of discussion. What does the sun feel like? He asked. It's hot, I guess, I wrote back, waiting for some kind of punchline. He quickly changed the topic, and I was left confused, but decided not to push it any further, as I was eager to return to our argument about which season of Lost was the best. Then, a couple weeks later, he asked another similar question. Is it really that bright out there? What do you mean? I asked, the previous question still lingering in the back of my mind. Outside, in the movies, it's always so bright and windy. Is it really like that? He continued. I replied, why don't you just look out the window and tell me? I can't, he said. What do you mean? I said. He replied, I've never been there before. I don't know how to get outside. I couldn't tell whether or not he was joking, but rather than calling him out on the prank, I decided to dig deeper. I asked, you've never been outside? Like, for your entire life? Never, he said. I proceeded to ask, what about your parents? Why are they keeping you locked up? He went on to say, I've never seen them. I've been in this room my whole life. Only talking to a voice through a speaker. I wasn't even sure if any of the things I saw in the movies were real, but after speaking to you, I know there's more out there, more than this dry, dark room. Come on, man, you're f***ing with me, right? I asked, a sense of dread rising in my body as the idea of a joke faded. Then he logged off. Months passed, and I attempted to get in contact with Adam to no avail. He'd seemingly vanished from the forum, and I started to worry. Then, after being AWOL for 5 months, he sent me one final message. Hey, sorry about our last discussion. Everything is fine, and I was just messing around with the never being outside thing. Let's just forget it ever happened. Please. Before I even got the chance to respond, he logged back off. I kept rereading the last message, and it didn't take long before I realized the message was a literal call for help, based on the first letter of each sentence. It was quite obvious, and I guess he got caught by whoever was holding him captive because I never heard back from him. Wherever Adam is now, if even he's alive, I hope he can find a way to feel the warmth of the sun like he so desperately wanted. I just wish I could help him.
What the hell are these things? The drugs? Was it the drugs? It can't be the drugs. Mr. Z always gives me quality stuff. If it's not the drugs, then what the hell is happening? My name is Jake. My life used to be mundane. I did the same thing day after day. Every day went like this. Wake up, go to school, get bullied, and come home. It was a measly existence at best. This all changed in the 11th grade, for better or worse. 2 things happened to me in the 11th grade. Kids started to experiment with drugs, and I discovered the dark web. This was a lethal combination. My first time on the dark web was innocent. My friend came over for a sleepover. He said, "Wanna see something crazy?" This piqued my interest. I quickly responded, "Yeah, why not?" My friend grabbed my laptop and downloaded a VPN and the Tor browser. He copied and pasted a link into the browser, and next thing you know, my screen was filled with drugs. I said, "No way this is real, man. So I can just buy anything on this page and it will just get shipped to my house?" My friend said, "Yep, that's exactly how
Hello?
it works. You just need to encrypt your messages to vendors with a key and you're good to go." The next day, my friend left to go home. I quickly jumped back on my computer and went back to the marketplace. I scrolled through all the possible options. Weed, wax, MDMA, acid. The possibilities were endless. Curious, I bought 1 gram of weed. This was also before weed was legalized in my state. 1 week later, I got a small envelope in the mail. I opened the envelope and there was a pillbox. Inside the pillbox was 1 gram of weed. After this success, I quickly logged back onto the dark web to buy more. I logged in and I received a message. It was from the vendor who I bought the weed from. His username was Mr. Z. It read, "Hey Jake, I noticed you're a new buyer on the dark web. This is an exciting place full of opportunity. I became a really rich man in this place. You remind me a bit of myself when I was young, outcasted by society, but eager to make it big and stand out. I've done a bit of research on your area, and it is a goldmine, Jake. How would you like driving to your senior dance in your own Lamborghini? Having any girl of your choice, or maybe even buying your own place? You can be the big man on campus. This can all happen within 1 year's time if you partner with me." I was shocked and didn't know how to reply. Part of me wanted to tell him to screw himself. Another part of me felt entranced by his offer. Imagining myself pulling up to prom in a nice car was intoxicating. Still, I needed more information. I was young, but I wasn't stupid. I typed back, "You don't even know me. How do I know this isn't all just a scam?" "Well, Jake, for starters, you can look at my reviews. I am one of the highest rated vendors on the marketplace. These reviews can be faked as they are secured in blockchain technology. After you purchased from me, I looked into your life. All I had to do was one search with your name in my software, and what I found disturbed me. Anytime someone ever made a social media post with your name, I can see it. My software can even pull from direct messages between people. If your name is in it, I can see it. Let me just tell you, Jake, what I found may disturb you." I quickly typed back, "Just show me." What he sent shook me to the core. He sent a series of screenshots. It was a Facebook conversation between my best friend, Trevor, and a popular girl in my school named Sarah. The conversation was about a month old. Sarah messaged, "Hey Trevor, let's hang out this Friday." Trevor replied, I can't. I promised Jake we would hang out." Sarah said, "Jake, that loser? You can't be serious." Trevor messaged back, "Jake might be a little socially awkward, but he is cool when you get to know him." Sarah replied, "Well, the whole school thinks he's a loser. If you want to hang out with me, you are going to have to ditch that nerd. It just looks bad if you are associated with him." I could feel the rage building inside of me as I read this. My blood was boiling. It felt like steam was rising from my head. I tried to calm down and take deep breaths. I replied back to the dark web vendor. I messaged him, "This is all photoshopped. None of these conversations you screenshotted are real. You are just trying to play me. He replied, well, here's Trevor's Facebook username and password. Feel free to log into his account and read the messages for yourself. I did exactly that. And he was right. All the messages were there, right for me to see. I was horrified. My horror quickly turned to anger, then rage. I wanted revenge. My only option was Mr. Z, the dark web vendor. He could change my life for the better. I messaged him back. So now what? He replied, well, I assume you don't have any money. I will fund your initial startup. The partnership was formed. My dark web vendor sent me 1 pound of marijuana in the mail for starters. It came in a normal brown box in a vacuum sealed bag. What was weird is that I never saw a delivery van drop it off. It just showed up at my door. No knock, no doorbell. I figured he must have his own delivery system for the larger stuff. He didn't charge me for the first shipment. He told me to sell it around school and to wire him half the profit once I sold it. I happily agreed. It was a bit nerve-wracking at first. Carrying weed to school didn't feel good. After a couple weeks, selling became easy. It didn't take long before I had consistent business. I didn't even have to bring the weed to school anymore. People would just come directly to my house to buy it. This made it a lot less sketchy for me. My parents were divorced and my mom worked nights, so this was a perfect setup. I sold that first pound of weed in 3 weeks. Since I sold it by the gram, I made a lot of money on the first batch. My vendor suggested I sell it for $15 per gram. I thought this was overpriced, but the quality was so good people never complained. I made $2,000 on that first pound. I quickly became the cool kid at school, just as Mr. Z had predicted. Mr. Z was the nickname of the vendor. He never gave me his real name for obvious reasons. My popularity opened a lot of doors. I got access into all of the exclusive parties. What is even better is I never offered my services to Sarah. She tried her hardest to win me over. She even came on to me at a party. But I denied her and told her off. This felt really good. During my senior year, I ended up driving a Porsche 911 Turbo S to prom. It was rented, but nobody knew the wiser. I even had the hottest prom date in all of my school. I was on cloud 9. After high school, I had so much money, I didn't know what to do. Mr. Z told me everything would be fine, that I just had to lay low and hide the money as best as I can. He said when I got to $1 million cash, we would start a legitimate business to launder the money through. Even though I never met Mr. Z, I trusted him with my life. I was forever in debt to him. He changed my life around. My confidence was through the roof. Mr. Z suggested I enroll in a nearby college to expand our business empire. I did exactly that. I ended up renting a house with cash. I could have bought 5 houses, but that would be too suspicious. I paid for everything in cash, less records that way. My college life started, and let's just say Mr. Z had me sell much more dangerous drugs than just weed. He said the money was much better with these new drugs. And he was right. The money was better than ever. The girls were better than ever, and the parties were better than ever. As the business continued to grow, my ego and confidence grew tenfold. I stopped being careful and started living in excess. I bought a Lamborghini in cash and a few other cars. I also bought a nice house for myself. Did I tell Mr. Z? Hell no. I would never. But Mr. Z was too smart. I knew he was onto me. Our messages were shorter, and Mr. Z stopped bringing up future business plans. He had to know about my purchases. The answer to my question and anxiety was answered one fall night. A night that I will never forget. A night that still haunts my life to this day. I picked up the package like normal. I unwrapped it and began dividing the substance into small batches to sell. I noticed this particular substance had a blue hue to it. All the previous orders, the drugs were pure white. This seemed very odd to me. I quickly messaged Z about the order. He said it was a slightly different batch and that it was fine. I believed him. Why was there any reason not to? There was a big fraternity party that particular night. I didn't take the Lamborghini because I thought it would warrant unwanted attention. I just took my BMW. Pulling up to the house, I couldn't believe my eyes. The house was massive. I couldn't believe how big it was. The front had these massive white pillars. I thought this was perfect. A bunch of rich fraternity guys or girls to sell to. The middle of the house was a giant grass courtyard. This is where I spent most of the party selling my product. I couldn't believe how good looking the girls were. But that's beside the point. After selling all my goods, I counted the money. $3 grand, all cash. I was about to leave the courtyard when a frat guy, Chad, came over to me. He said, "Hey man, that's some good stuff. You got some more?" I noticed Chad was jittery and shaking, almost uncontrollably. I asked, "How much did you take?" Chad replied, "I don't know, man. I just need more. I need more." I was getting a little weirded out. I tried to think of some excuse to leave Chad, but nothing came to mind. "Chad, you need to calm down and drink some water. Go sit down." Chad angrily said, "No, you don't understand. I need more, or else I'm going to die." I stared. Looked like reptilian eyes. He blinked again, and they were normal. Chad continued to talk. "Man, I just need another hit. I feel like I'm about to change." "What the hell do you mean about to change?" I asked. He said, "It's happening, please. Please help me." I stared into Chad's face. His face was blank. He started to salivate. My heart dropped. I thought he must have overdosed. Then something bizarre happened. His eyes turned. They looked reptilian. I glanced around at everyone around me. They were all frozen, salivating with blank stares. I walked past everyone and bolted out of the courtyard out the back of the house. I looked back and I noticed everyone was following me. Some were crawling. They all were salivating from the mouth. I ran deep into the forest, the crazed pack in close pursuit. After running for a while, I let the pack catch up. As soon as they got close, I doubled back and hoping this would give me
Hey, I'm Bruno Mars, and this is Anderson .Paak. Together we are Silk Sonic.
I got to the car and floored it. As I rounded
If you remember, I did a few moves for anyone called Leave the Door Open, set to our song Leave the Door Open a while back, and it swept the nation, right? It swept the nation. Well, we're at it again, bringing you some new outfits inspired by who
What the
else?
hell did you give
Silk
me?
Sonic.
Sunday. You better get going, kid.
Check out our outfits today and listen to some of our favorite tracks from our new album and the new Icon radio station hosted by Bootsy Cop. Bootsy!
Did you think I wouldn't find out about Lambo and the new house? I know everything.
All right, y'all. Love you,
You need to get a
Fortnite.
move on.
Keep on
They
dancing,
can
keep
smell
on
you
game.
from miles.
That's all.
As soon as I got back to my house, I quickly packed 4 black duffel bags full of cash and rushed out the door. I fled and drove out of the country. After a few years in South America, I thought my life was getting back to normal. Even though I was running low on the drug money, I used most of it to start new businesses. I owned a few dry cleaners and 1 restaurant. The money was nothing like it used to be, but it felt good to be making an honest living. My old life came back to haunt me one night. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. A crash at my window woke me right up. I pulled up my blinds. It was Chad. Never, ever start a career on the dark web. You will regret it. For my birthday, I decided to treat myself to a dark web mystery box gift. It was a service I'd used several times before, and they had never disappointed, sending heaps of useless but funny things to my doorstep. "Happy birthday, Trevor," a note on the box read. I picked up the package placed on my doorstep and noticed a letter attached to it. There comes a time in every man's life where their skills and knowledge has to be tested. With that in mind, I shall set you out on a treasure hunt. Please follow the instructions within the box, and for safety reasons, burn every letter once it has been read or solved. To my surprise, the note was signed by Pete, my best friend since childhood. It was a neat surprise, but I was confused as to how exactly he'd gotten involved with the anonymous service. Whether he was just an active user there himself who'd recognize me, or if he'd been contacted by the website, I didn't know. Nevertheless, it seemed like a cool gift. My first clue would simply be a piece of paper with 2 incoherent words written on it. Van Mace. Could it be a name? Maybe a location? I sat down with it and contemplated the words in front of me. After just a minute, I realized it was an anagram. The letters just had to be rearranged to form a new meaning. Man cave was the hidden message. It was a reference to Pete's basement, a place we'd frequently spent our Saturday nights playing video games and drinking whiskey. I burned the letter in accordance with the instructions and quickly made my way to the man cave. There, I used my spare key to unlock the door, half expecting a surprise party. Instead, all I found was another clue. An ace of spades and a picture. Both were pinned to a board with an unfamiliar knife. I removed the knife and checked out the clue.
Sorry once, bro. I muted the mic.
Went with friends.
Happy birthday, bro.
Smoke and relax. A beautiful field which no one knew about. It was just a short hike outside the city. I made my way there in about an hour. Our usual place was hidden in the shade beneath some trees. Once there, I noticed a shovel sticking out of the ground. On top was some fresh dirt. Spade. Ace of spades. Very creative, I chuckled to myself. Without hesitation, I picked it up and started digging through the ground. After less than a minute, I hit something solid. Expecting another clue, I bent down and brushed away the dirt. As I put my hand on the cold surface, I immediately retracted it in shock. It was Pete, buried under the dirt, dead from multiple stab wounds to his chest. In shock, I called the police, devastated by the loss of my best friend. While I waited, I sat down and tried to figure out what the hell had happened. realized that I had burned every note and that my fingerprints were all over the murder scene, from the strange knife in the basement to the key and
गेट तो लगा दो
shovel
यार
itself used to bury him.
मतलब
I
पूरे तो
had
बेचारा
set out
रूम दिन भर बंद रहता है
खुला रहता है जब अपन नहीं रहते
To be
तो
perfectly honest, I was never in all that dark.
कोई भी नहीं है खुला रहता है इसमें इसमें भी लाइट चलती है आप ऐसा बुलवाए
In fact, my whole family seems to be missing the technology.
तो तुम कल नहीं देखे थे कल दिखाया था तो कल क्या
Struggle
देखे
with everything from computers and phones to toasters and microwaves.
कोई
दूर से
My
देखना
mother even got scammed a few times before she
सब
passed
फोकस
away.
में अरे
Luckily,
सही
she
है
never lost
सब
anything
लाल
more
लाल
than
ले
a
रहे
few $100. Still stuck. Francis, my best friend, on the other hand, was a tech nerd. He loved that stuff. He never shied away from looking up the most bizarre and terrific things online. If he could reach it, he would. He even tried to set up a Tor browser on my computer, but I just ended up ignoring it, somehow deleting the shortcut and losing track of it. Still, he periodically sent me pictures from AlphaBay, which is apparently some dark web black market.
हाँ तो 5 बजे
Mostly
तक जाऊँगा
strange or illegal stuff. Other times he'd find impossible random conspiracies.
nope
It was usually weird and funny.
nope
Sometimes he sent me darker things.
क्या
With murder victims, videos,
वो रखा है ना
car
कैल्जोन
crashes, and other accidents. It made me appreciate our friendship a little less. Francis was all we stuck together. On the rare occasions that he crossed the line, I just politely asked him to stop. It worked. Then after the shock had worn off, it would always start off so innocent, funny pictures or forums. But it inevitably got darker, escalating to more disturbing areas of the dark web. The most terrific thing he ever sent me, however, was little more than a picture of myself, found randomly out there in the sea of onion sites. It was just a screenshot he sent me, with a picture of myself, with some text lined up next to it. In a way, it looked like a profile for some sort of social media. Simple and seemingly funny. It contained my name, birth date, address, everything. So sorry, Tyler. I didn't know how they found you. That's just sent me as a message. What do you mean? Who are they? What's going on? I asked back in a flood of questions. Did you open any suspicious emails or sign up for something weird online? I think back. I couldn't remember anything that stood out. But in my business, I dealt with hundreds of emails each day from various clients. I don't know. What's going on? Your name is on Alicia, listed as a participant. What the hell is Alicia? A red room. It was supposed to be closed down. Bad. Chuckled at his remark. I wasn't much of a tech genius, but even I knew red rooms were little more than myths filled with scared teenagers and gullible adults. Come on, man, this is a joke, right? Red rooms aren't real. I think this one is. After that, I'd reached the maximum amount of Francis antics that I could handle. I told him to back off and leave me alone for a bit, which had become somewhat of a routine between the two of us. Still, I took his warning serious enough to dial the non-emergency line to the police. I explained the situation, but they didn't take it seriously. After all, my personal information leaked on the website shouldn't have been much of a threat. They just told me to call back if anything more substantial happened. The mysterious website. Francis even admitted. Truth is, most people have their email information leaked somewhere else. Even passwords and personal details are readily available all over the place. But for most people, that's just useless information. Then about a month later, I received a letter in my mail. It was just a free envelope in my mailbox. The only way I could have received it would be if someone had personally delivered it themselves. I opened the letter to find a perfectly black paper inside, with little more than a single line of text in the middle. It was just a string of random numbers and letters, ending in .onion, to mark the fact that it was a dark web page. At first, I didn't even connect the dots. I had long since forgotten the fact that all my personal details had been leaked. Instead of just throwing it away as I should have, I decided to contact Francis. He was more intrigued than worried, showing up about 15 minutes later to help me connect to the website. He only needed about a second to dig up the Tor browser and input the onion link I'd received.